I know that I'm very honored and privileged to stand here on this rostrum. I know that any of you that are members here, when I look around this room, former members, former colleagues, staff members who work so closely, Speaker David Ralston, would be honored to come here just as I am and stand here on this day. It is a special day for this House. The man who left his imprint on this House. We will never forget him.
The Georgia House holds a solemn remembrance and celebration of the life of former House Speaker David Ralston on what would have been his 69th birthday. Good evening and welcome to Lawmakers on Legislative Day 33. I'm Donna Lowry in Atlanta. As the longtime Speaker, David Ralston joyfully celebrated the birthdays of House members. Today, they acknowledged his birthday and his accomplishments. More on that coming up. Also on the show, we'll look at bipartisan legislation aimed at addressing problems with bad landlords and bad tenants when it comes to rental properties. In the studio, two legislators will discuss the debate on a bill to ban gender-affirming surgeries for children under 18. We'll hear some of the testimony before the House Public Health Committee this afternoon. We'll talk about the debate on the issue with two lawmakers later in the show, and also Thursday marks the second anniversary of the spa shootings. We're going to learn the latest on legislation. But first, let's check in with our Capitol correspondent, Rochelle Ritchie.
Well, hi, Donna. A bittersweet birthday celebration for former Speaker David Ralston, and in the Senate, tax relief for some Georgians.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, Speaker Ralston, because we really miss you.
A moment of celebration in the House today for former Speaker David Ralston, who passed away in November 2022 and was the longest-serving Speaker of any state House in the country.
Speaker Ralston had a way of letting you know that he cared about you. And today, as we honor him, I count it an honor and a privilege to be able to speak on behalf of a man who loved the state of Georgia.
A dedication video to his life and legacy illustrating his impact on members, elected officials, and Georgians across the state.
He was larger than life in many ways, but his service to our state and the impact he made on the policies that impact the people's everyday lives in this state, for me, is what embodies what David Ralston was about.
He could say more in 5 minutes than any other person I've ever seen in politics. He was a big man with a big, strong voice, and he could swing that gavel and demand attention, and he could lead that chamber and run that chamber, the House of Representatives, with an iron fist, but he also could do it with a big old soft heart.
He always remembered where he came from, but he also realized that people were counting on him and us all over Georgia to make it better.
His wife, Cherie, tearfully speaking today and thanking those who continue to remember his work, his heart, and to carry on his mission.
My husband loved this state, and he wanted to leave it a better place. He loved our community, and he worked tirelessly to leave it a better place. If you are a staff member of David Ralston, he loved you and wanted you to be better, and he always tried to facilitate that. We thank you. We love you. David Ralston loved you. He considered you family. Thank you for having us here today.
Speaker Ralston would have been 69. 6 bills and a resolution today in the Senate as taxes were the main talking point. Governor Kemp's campaign pledge to return some of the budget surplus and income tax rebates was addressed in HB 162. The bill would refund $250, $375, or $500, depending on your filing status.
This bill is about getting state dollars back into the pockets of hardworking Georgians rather than letting the money stay at the state level. This will total about $1 billion, and it comes from our record high budget surplus. That surplus is a result of both the governor's efforts to be the first to reopen our economy and all of our efforts here in this House and in the other House to conservatively manage our state budget.
Some Democrats said they would vote for the bill, but pointed to what they say is a disconnect regarding the bill's priorities.
I'm voting for this bill. And the reason I'm voting for this bill is because our voters expect our surpluses to get returned to them when they reach these levels. But the reason that they expect that is because we have not created a culture of fully sustaining good government at the state level in the state of Georgia. I guess all I'm trying to do today by coming up here is say, yeah, let's do this. Let's give tax relief to voters who expect it, but let's not forget our longer term and more solemn obligation to make sure the government works and that it works at the most basic level.
But not every Democrat.
Voting yes or no on this bill?
I haven't decided. I voted no last year. I think, as I said, that tax relief can be an appropriate priority along with a balanced set of priorities. From where I sit and where my constituents sit, our priorities are not appropriately balanced. So I'm a little bit torn, as you might imagine. Were this more comprehensive, I would certainly be a yes. And I'm thinking internally right now in answer to your question, because I came in intending to vote for it, although I voted no last year, but as I've been listening to some of our colleagues, I may not be able to support it.
The bill was passed 46-7. HB 311 would give temporary tax relief to owners that had property damage in a federally declared disaster zone in Georgia. And finally, House Resolution 66 would ratify Governor Kemp's suspension of the state's gas and diesel taxes last year, citing it at the time as a way to fight inflation and the high fuel cost. Both passed unanimously. And Donna, that is my Capitol report. Back to you.
Thanks, Rochelle. We're going to focus now on a bill that it has a lot of firsts in it for Georgia when it comes to landlord-tenant issues with rental housing, including putting in a state law requirement that rental properties must be, quote, fit for human habitation. Joining the show are two lawmakers committed to making that happen. The author of the bill, Republican Representative Casey Carpenter of Dalton. He's also chairman of the Creative Arts and Entertainment Committee. And Democratic Representative Amari Crawford of Decatur, a new lawmaker who's just on his 33rd day in this session. Welcome to Lawmakers, both of you.
Thanks, man.
Representative Carpenter, you mentioned in the Senate Judiciary hearing that you've been on both sides of this issue when it comes to tenants and being a landlord. And so this was something that you felt passionately about doing something about.
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in Whitfield County, but we moved a lot as a kid. So I think in 18 years we moved 16 times. Sometimes we owned, sometimes we were renters. But so I understand that dynamic. And then also I own some property that we rent out, so I understand the landlord as well. So yeah. I know, and then reading what the AJC put out, we knew the issues that are going on. It's not just metro issues, it's statewide issues.
Yeah, the AJC's Dangerous Dwellings series that they've been doing. So the fact that in the law, you didn't have before, that a place had to be fit for habitation.
That's right, and then have to maintain it. That's the point, right? Is when you lease the property, it has to be livable, is what I say, because I have a hard time with the other word. So it has to be livable when you rent the place, but then it also has to be maintained throughout the lease. So that was a big piece. It also had it added the right to cure for the first time in the state of Georgia. So you have 3 business days to catch your rent up so you don't get evicted.
Yeah, I'm going to put up on the screen a little bit about what else it has in it, and that is part of it. Some of the specifics of the bill. It puts a cap on security deposits of no more than 3 months' rent. It requires landlords to provide tenants with a 3-day cure period after a missed payment. It provides an expedited conviction process for people charged with certain violent offenses, and it prevents the landlord from turning off the air conditioning to force an eviction, which Representative Crawford surprised me. I didn't know that that was something that had been done. I guess there needed to be some clarification on something like that.
Yes, thank you. Very happy to sign on to this bill as one of the co-sponsors. One of the things that stood out to me is that in 1991, if we go back, this state, the Georgia General Assembly, enacted a law that says that they would support decent, safe, and affordable housing. I believe that this bill, with the bipartisan support, will do just that. It's going to open up the door and try to fulfill the promise of that legislation that was passed many years ago. So I'm really excited to be a part of this bill.
Yeah, and things that weren't in law before now, excuse me. Yeah, so you want to see that happen.
Absolutely. One of the key things for me in this bill was that it gives tenants an opportunity to cure before there is an eviction. What we do know is that there are a lot of, as I would deem it to be, collateral consequences for people who are evicted. If you are evicted, you have to think about the rippling effect that it has on that person. It could be from homelessness, of course, being the number one thing, but an impact on your job, health disparities. And so I think that this bill will help to cure some of those collateral consequences.
Yeah, I want to talk with you, Chairman Carpenter, a little bit about the part dealing with convictions. And you said convictions and not, I'm sorry, you said arrest and charges, but not convictions. Why not wait until a person is convicted?
Right. So unfortunately, we had to take that piece out. It did not make it out of committee because, you know, both sides on the issue wanted to be able to address the criminals, but unfortunately, there was not a way to do it and provide criminals with due process, which is important, I think, for everybody. Is, you know, we're still in America and you're innocent until proven guilty, and so to figure out a way to expedite that to you know, something that the landlords wanted, but also the neighbors want, right? You don't want to live in that environment, but there's no way to solve that problem and maintain that due process. So we had to actually take that piece out.
So nothing dealing with that
That's
in the
right.
bill
And it was
right
heartbreaking,
now.
you know, because you get two sides that don't hardly agree on anything, and they both agreed that, but there just was no way around it.
Maybe there's something that can be done down the road when it comes to, because there are people who are upset about crime in their area and people who are doing things in these rental properties that are criminal.
Well, one of the things that I remember from the committee hearing is that we did have discussion about what that would look like to answer that specific question. The Georgia code, criminal code, is pretty extensive, and what we discussed is that there are some really harsh crimes that, of course, we won't debate whether or not a person should be evicted because of those crimes. But then there are also some crimes such as simple assault, which, while something we don't advocate for, is not the murder type charges. And so we had a discussion on what we could do to try to negotiate, if you will, what it would look like to ensure that people are not being kicked out for some of the more petty crimes, and we are looking at the harsh criminals.
Yeah. What are your constituents saying about a bill like that? This is something you heard from them ahead of time about, right?
Oh, of course. So evictions in DeKalb County, they cost the county approximately $10,000 or more. So this is not only economically friendly for DeKalb County, but also the eviction rate in Georgia disproportionately impacts minorities. And so a lot of people in DeKalb County are extremely happy that now they have more tenant rights than they've ever had before.
Yeah, so it's passed out of the House, and where is it now?
It's Senate Judiciary, so
Okay.
to actually talk to the chairman this afternoon, hopefully get moving, if not the end of the week, first of next week, so super excited.
I want to talk about another of your bills before you leave. You have a bill to, it's HB 131, the Workforce Development Act. You've been pushing this for a while.
I mean, it's like a broken record, man. I've been on this thing about 3 times talking about it, so I'm looking forward to continue to push it throughout the session. Obviously, there's some people in my party that have heartburn with it, and I understand, but I think at the end of the day, it's a solution, and it's a way to grow our party and show that we are compassionate Republicans.
So I think we need to explain it. It deals with DACA recipients.
That's right. It's the DACA bill. It would provide an affordable rate of tuition, what I call a taxpayer rate of tuition for the individuals that have been DACA recipients in the state of Georgia that have been here the whole time. We've educated through our K-12 system. They're paying taxes, and we're just saying, look, they can't pay 3 times in-state to go to a community college. We have empty seats. It would allow them to go to schools with empty seats. And I mean, to me, it's a no-brainer. If you can look in the mirror and say, honestly think that the federal government is going to take these individuals and take them back to a country they don't even know, you've lost your mind. So at this point, if you know they're going to be here, would you rather have them educated so they can take care of themselves and take care of their children who will be or who are American citizens? It's a solution. You know, I got people in my party beating me up on it. It cracks me up. There's a gentleman on the Georgia gang with nice poofy hair that has been calling me a puppet of the open border lobby, and it's just, that's not what this is about. This is about a solution, and this is about saying, look, you know, we understand that, you know, that there may be some issues whether or not you should be here, but you're here and you're not going anywhere. So let's come with a solution. And I think it's a great way to grow our party. I'm all about growing the party and showing that Republicans can be cool to hang out with and Republicans care. I want you to keep your money. I want you to have a job, but I also want you to know that I'm concerned with your well-being.
It didn't make it out of the House, so you're still hopeful.
You know, day 40 is still not here, so we can go another round if we need to.
How's it been for you for these 33 days so far?
Oh, I've enjoyed it.
Yeah?
Enjoyed an opportunity to get to know people from all over the state and to make a meaningful impact on the people, not only in my district, but people all around the state of Georgia. And so I've enjoyed learning the process, the procedures, and the people.
All righty. Well, we'll see how those bills go. I want to thank you both for being here today to talk about them, and we'll keep up with it.
Thank you very much.
Coming up, we'll look at a bill to ban gender-affirming surgeries and clarify that role.
Lawmakers is made possible by Georgia Farm Bureau. With over 80 years of helping everyone understand the importance of agriculture in our state. After all, ag is Georgia's #1 industry. Food and fiber production represents over $74 billion in output of Georgia's strong economy. The Georgia Farm Bureau legislative team works to represent producers across Georgia at the state capitol during the session and year-round. Georgia Farm Bureau, the voice of Georgia farmers.
Here's what's new this month with Passport.
Whichever way I turn, there's a trap. Let's set this palace on fire.
She's to be married. She is not married yet.
It's never a burden to love or give. The mother is at the heart of everything we do.
These and all your favorite shows are available with Passport. Support your PBS station and stream more with Passport on the PBS app.
Community. Learning, working, playing, celebrating. Doing life is always better together. At GPB, we aim to provide you with the tools to be able to do life together well. Our mission to educate, inform, and entertain inspires everything from our wide range of programming to our stimulating radio conversations to our fun in-person events. We've got something for everyone. Visit gpb.org/community to learn more about our upcoming events.
We care about things that affect the lives of every American.
We are there at the front lines
to get to the heart of what really matters in every issue.
This country has not seen this in 80 years.
This extraordinary moment in American history.
You're making such a huge impact.
Trust is at the heart of what we do.
Welcome back to Lawmakers. I'm Donna Lowry. Earlier today, the bill to ban gender-affirming surgeries for children under 18 narrowly passed out of the House Public Health Committee. We're going to spend time talking about that bill and hear from both sides. We've had the bill's sponsor, the lead sponsor on Lawmakers last week. Joining me today are Democratic Representative Sam Park of Lawrenceville and Democratic Representative Park Cannon of Atlanta. Welcome to Lawmakers. Park first name, Park last name. Okay, I got it straight. I want to start by showing a little of the presentation that the bill's chief sponsor, Republican Representative Cardin Summers, made to the House Judiciary Committee this afternoon.
We designed this bill to make a pause for young people. I call it the Protection of Children Act. You know, we don't want anybody to have gender surgeries under the age of 18 years old. We want them to be make their own decision. After 18 years old, whatever they decide to do is their business. But until they reach 18 years old, no surgeries and general surgeries. In this bill allows for puberty blockers.
Okay, Representative Park, your reaction.
So unfortunately, even though it has a nice name of Protect the Children Act, it would do the exact opposite. This bill would not protect children. In fact, it would attack children. There is testimony in committee that if this bill passes, transgender kids will die. And so this is a serious matter, and certainly a bill about life or death for so many of our most vulnerable citizens in the state. And so it's incredibly concerning that they're continuing to push this discriminatory bill that's government overreach. The other point I'll mention is, there's a lot of studies, peer-reviewed studies and evidence on gender affirming treatment and therapies. This bill is not based on any of those peer-reviewed studies or evidence. It's based on opinion and anecdotes, which is all the more concerning.
Yeah, I want to get your reaction too.
It's very damaging for the youth to see that their lawmakers don't understand them and instead are just going with anecdotes. So because the kids are in school while we're at legislative session, their parents come. We had parents testify today. A very specific story about a young girl. She's 11 at this point. She is on those puberty blockers at this point, but she cannot stay on that until she's 16. It's not going to allow for her to continue to just develop, even in a very general way, with her peers. And this bill would make it so that she could not take the next step, therefore hurting her. This bill for that family member led the mother to cry after the bill passed.
Yeah, I want to put up on the screen, because there's support from the health community, a letter signed by 500 Georgia healthcare providers who are against SB 140. Politicians, it says, in part, politicians shouldn't be in the room for the private family conversations like this. SB 140 is a clear form of government overreach that violates parents and providers' rights by taking away their ability to freely discuss health care options and make decisions about what's in the best interest of transgender youth. So your thoughts on that letter? You guys have been hearing from the health community, haven't you? And we had some people testify today.
We certainly have. We received the letter and it was a stack of information. I went through and looked at every single one of those providers, and I'm really grateful that they are stepping out and being very clear about their position on this bill. The American Academy of Pediatrics has made it very clear what the standard care looks like, and has made it very aware of everyone that this is not a decision that is made in haste. This is a decision that involves a team of providers, months of counseling and therapy, and a stair-step process. Now they're ultimately saying we're stopping that stair-step, and it's not right.
Yeah, Representative Park, today there was an amendment added to it. So it passed on crossover day out of the Senate, but the House Judiciary Committee added something today.
So all the more concerning in terms of the direction this bill is moving in. There was an amendment added to the bill that would essentially criminalize medical providers for practicing the medically accepted standard of care when it comes to transgender children and minors. Again, this bill is bad for Georgia. It may be good for Republican politics. I've heard this polls very well in their districts, which is also concerning in and of itself. But this is bad policy, and it will cause harm to some of our most vulnerable citizens in the state.
So that amendment is essentially saying years later, there's the chance that a person who feels that they didn't want that surgery can sue the health providers.
That they can hold them criminally
liable. Yeah. Okay. I want to play more with the sponsor of the bill and this exchange between Democratic Representative Michelle Au and Senator Summers.
Why do you think the judgment of the Georgia State Legislature and of you, 99% plus of which have no clinical training in pediatrics whatsoever, should supersede what the American Academy of Pediatrics has determined to be best practices in caring for gender diverse children?
I don't care what happens after 18, but I don't think any child at 14 years old should have irreversible surgery that may affect them. And if this hearing had been tomorrow, if it had been tomorrow, there's a lady flying in that got gender surgery at 14 years old, and she's coming in special to speak to our caucus in the morning to say, it's the worst thing that ever happened to me in my life. I regret it. If I'd have only waited, I could have made a more mature decision.
Your reaction to that?
Well, I was sitting right there, and I was also sitting next to a transgender youth who was crying, who was shaking. And we feel for our constituents who are being discriminated against and attacked with this bill. We're going to continue to show up to the Rules Committee, to the floor. We're going to work to table this bill or to make it stop before session ends.
Yeah, there was a movement to try to table it today. It did not go anywhere. It feels like it's moving along. This is something that's going to happen.
Unfortunately, it seems they're continuing to move this very extreme piece of legislation forward, which I think will really damage and undermine a lot of the good bipartisan goodwill that we've been able to build this past legislative session, which is unfortunate.
Okay, before we go, I want to ask you about something else. Thursday will mark 2 years since 8 people, including 6 Asian women, were murdered at Asian spas in Metro Atlanta. And I know you're a sponsor of legislation that you hope will prevent mass shootings like this one. Talk about that legislation.
So speaking of protecting the children, you know, the #1 killer of children right now is gun violence. And so, unfortunately, Republicans in a Republican-dominated legislature have not moved on passing common-sense gun safety legislation. Thankfully, due to the perseverance and good work of Representative Al, we're going to get a hearing on a very common-sense bill, which is, I believe it's called the Pediatric Safe Storage Act, which simply requires that guns be safely stored. Multiple studies have found that this is one of the best ways to reduce gun violence amongst children. And so there are very clear policies that we can pass with bipartisan support to actually protect children as opposed to playing politics with their lives.
Yeah, I know there were a couple of other gun bills that didn't make it as far as this one's going to make it. You feel hopeful about this one?
Well, keep in mind that it's a hearing-only bill after crossover day, so this will not be a legislation that goes into effect. Right. But we'll continue to educate members of our fellow colleagues about this important issue, and we'll continue to organize to make sure that we're electing legislators who do what's right to protect the next generation.
There's some other activities planned for Thursday, too, at the Capitol. Talk about them.
Yes, so we'll be having a press conference and a lot of memorials of the victims and their families to ensure that we continue to do everything within our power to prevent these sorts of tragedies from happening again. Discrimination anywhere is a threat. As Dr. King would say, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And so whether it's discriminating against transgender youth or whether it's discriminating against members of the Asian American community, we have to stand united in solidarity and use what power we do have to make progress in ensuring that we're building a safer Georgia together.
Yeah. Representative Cannon, I know you support these efforts.
Absolutely. We've been working on these issues beside our community members, and we've been to the events. We've been helping their families get through these times. I really hope that legislation will get on the books.
Okay, we'll see what happens Thursday. Yes. It's hard to believe that it's been 2 years. In that time, it's been a journey in terms of educating people on this issue, hasn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think we've come a long way, but Asian Americans are one of the fastest growing communities both here in the state of Georgia along with around the country. And hopefully we'll understand that you can't just keep your head down, work hard, and expect that you'll be okay. We have to organize. We have to speak out and call out injustice wherever we see it, with the understanding that the only way that we can truly protect ourselves is if we're building those coalitions, those multiracial coalitions, and fighting together against injustices of any kind.
I know that initially there was some more legislation. You guys have had a hard time getting some of it through.
Yes, I know Representative Marvin Lim, he introduced legislation to ensure cultural competency and language equity with law enforcement. I think he has been successful in working with the Georgia Post to ensure that there's a course available for cultural competency. So slow progress, but we're hoping to move in the right direction.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on to talk about it. Thank you, too. That's all for lawmakers today. We'll be back tomorrow for Legislative Day 34. Have a good night.